My son stood in the kitchen I paid for and told me I was no longer his mother. He said it in front of his wife, in front of my granddaughter, in front of the life I had built with my own 2 hands. What he didn't know was that I had already made my decision. You see, there's a difference between being kind and being a fool. I learned that difference at 63 years old, standing barefoot on Alaskan soil that I owned, watching the man I raised try to erase me from my own story. If you've ever been pushed aside by the people you sacrificed everything for, stay with me. This one's for you. And if you believe that respect isn't optional, hit that subscribe button. You'll want to see how this ends. Let me take you back. My name is Margaret. I was born in a fishing town outside Juneau. My husband, Robert, was a crab fisherman. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We had 1 son, Daniel. Robert died when Daniel was 12. Heart attack on the boat. They brought him back to me wrapped in a tarp. I didn't have time to fall apart. I worked 2 jobs. I cleaned hotel rooms in the morning and worked the cannery at night. My hands smelled like fish and bleach for 15 years. I saved every dollar I could. When Daniel turned 19, he wanted to go to college in Anchorage. I didn't hesitate. I sold Robert's truck, the only thing of value we had left, and sent him. 4 years later, he graduated. He got a job in finance. He met a woman named Claire. She was from Seattle, polished, educated. She spoke softly but looked at me like I was dirt under her nails. They got married. I paid for half the wedding. Daniel didn't ask. I offered. Because that's what mothers do. They moved back to Juneau after their daughter was born. They said they wanted to be close to family. I thought that meant me. I was wrong. Claire hated the rain. She hated the cold. She hated the small town life. And slowly, I realized she hated me too. She never said it, but I could feel it in the way she corrected me in front of others, the way she rolled her eyes when I spoke, the way she scheduled family dinners and forgot to tell me. Daniel didn't defend me. He just agreed with her, quietly, like I wasn't worth the argument. I told myself it was temporary, that he was just trying to keep the peace, that he still loved me. I kept giving. When they needed a down payment for their house, I gave them $20,000, my entire retirement fund. When their daughter needed braces, I paid. When Claire wanted to renovate their kitchen, I helped. I wasn't rich. I was just a mother who couldn't say no. And every time I gave, the respect I received grew smaller. I lived in a small cabin on 2 acres of land. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Robert and I had bought it 30 years ago with a dream of retiring there. After he died, I stayed. I fixed the roof myself. I painted the walls. I planted a garden. I made it home. Daniel used to visit every Sunday. Then it became every other week. Then once a month. Then only when he needed something. One day, he came over with Claire and their daughter, Emily. She was 8 years old. Sweet kid. Shy. We sat on the porch. Daniel looked uncomfortable. Claire looked annoyed. "Mom," he said, "we need to talk." I knew that tone. "Claire and I have been talking. This cabin, it's too much for you. You're getting older. What if you fall? What if something happens?" I looked at him. "I'm 62, Daniel. I'm not dying." Claire cut in. "Margaret, we're just worried. This place is isolated. You don't even have neighbors." "I like the quiet," I said. "We think you should sell it," Daniel said. The words hit me like a slap. "Sell it?" "You could move closer to us. Maybe a small apartment. Something manageable." "I don't want an apartment." Claire sighed. "Margaret, you're being stubborn." I looked at my son. "This is my home, Daniel." He didn't look at me. "We'll talk about it later." They left 10 minutes after that. I sat on the porch for hours, staring at the trees Robert and I planted together. That was the first time I realized I was losing him. The requests got worse. Daniel started asking me to babysit Emily 3-4 times a week. I didn't mind at first. I loved my granddaughter. But then it became expected. No calls ahead of time, just showing up and dropping her off. "Mom, we have plans. You don't mind, right?" I always said yes. One evening, I was supposed to meet an old friend for dinner. I hadn't seen her in months. Daniel showed up with Emily 20 minutes before I had to leave. "I have plans tonight," I said. Claire frowned. "Margaret, we have a charity event. It's important." "I told you I wasn't available." "It's just a few hours," Daniel said. "Come on, Mom." I canceled my dinner. I watched Emily fall asleep on my couch while my phone buzzed with my friend's messages. When Daniel picked her up at midnight, he didn't say thank you. He said, "Next time, don't make it so difficult." I stood in the doorway and watched him drive away. That was the night something inside me started to harden. The breaking point came 6 months later. Daniel called me. "Mom, we're coming over. We need to talk." I made coffee. I cleaned the house. I thought maybe he was finally going to apologize. He walked in with Claire and a man I didn't recognize. The man wore a suit and carried a briefcase. "Mom, this is Richard. He's a real estate agent." I stared. "Why is he here?" Claire smiled. It wasn't warm. "We found a buyer for your cabin." My heart stopped. "What?" Daniel sat down. "Mom, we've been talking to Richard for a few weeks. There's a development company interested in this land. They're offering $300,000. I'm not selling." "Margaret," Claire said, "be reasonable. You're living alone in the woods. This is a good offer." I said no. Richard cleared his throat. "Mrs. Margaret, with all due respect, your son has power of attorney." "No, he doesn't." Daniel shifted. "Mom, you signed the papers last year. Remember? When you were in the hospital?" I had been in the hospital for pneumonia. I was weak, confused. Daniel had brought me papers to sign. He said it was for emergency purposes only. I never thought he'd use it like this. "You can't do this," I whispered. Daniel looked at me. His face was blank. "It's already done. The sale goes through in 30 days. Claire stood. "You'll thank us later. We're doing this for you." I couldn't breathe. They walked out. I sat in the kitchen Robert built and cried for the first time in 20 years. Do you know what it feels like to be erased by your own child? If you do, leave a comment. Tell me I'm not alone in this. I didn't sleep that night. I sat at the kitchen table with a cup of cold coffee and stared at the walls. Everything in this house had a memory. The crack in the ceiling from the winter storm, the scratches on the floor from when Daniel was 5 and dragged his toy truck everywhere. This wasn't just a house. It was my life. And my son was taking it from me. The next morning, I called a lawyer. Her name was Sharon. She was in her 50s, sharp-eyed, no nonsense. She listened to my story without interrupting. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. "Margaret, do you still have the power of attorney documents?" "Yes." "Bring them to me." I did. She read them carefully. Then she looked up. "He lied to you." "What?" "This document gives him authority to make medical decisions on your behalf. That's it. He has no legal right to sell your property." My hands started shaking. "So the sale, it's invalid. If it goes through, it's fraud." Relief and rage hit me at the same time. "What do I do?" Sharon smiled. It was the kind of smile a wolf makes before it bites. "You fight back." I didn't tell Daniel what I knew. I let him think he had won. He called me twice over the next 2 weeks. Both times he was cold, transactional. "Mom, you need to start packing. The buyer wants to close early." "Okay," I said. "We'll help you find an apartment." "Okay." He sounded relieved, like I was finally being obedient. I hung up and went back to work. Sharon filed an emergency injunction to stop the sale. We also filed a complaint for financial exploitation and fraud. But that wasn't enough for me. I wanted him to feel what I felt. I wanted him to stand in front of people he respected and realize he had lost everything. I started quietly gathering evidence. Every text message where he ignored me, every time he asked for money, every promise he broke. I found the bank statements showing the $20,000 I gave him for his house, the receipts for the wedding I helped pay for, the records of every time I bailed him out. I documented everything. Sharon told me I didn't need all of it for the legal case. But I wasn't just building a legal case. I was building a reckoning. 3 weeks before the sale was supposed to close, Daniel invited me to a family dinner. It was at a nice restaurant downtown. Claire's parents were there, her brother, a few of their friends from the finance world. I almost didn't go, but then I realized this was it. This was my stage. I wore my best dress. I did my hair. I walked in with my head high. Daniel looked surprised to see me. "Mom, you came." "You invited me," I said. Claire's smile was tight. "We weren't sure you'd make it." I sat down at the far end of the table. I was quiet through most of the meal. I listened. I smiled. I played the role of the sweet, aging mother. Halfway through dinner, Claire's father raised his glass. "I want to toast Daniel and Claire. They've worked so hard. And now, with this land deal closing, they're finally going to have the financial freedom they deserve." Everyone clapped. I felt my chest tighten. Daniel smiled. He looked proud. Claire's mother leaned over to me. "Margaret, you must be so happy for them. It's such a smart investment." I looked at her. "Investment?" "Yes. Daniel told us they're buying a vacation property in Colorado with the money from your land." The table went quiet. I turned to Daniel. "A vacation property?" He wouldn't meet my eyes. "You told me you were selling my home to take care of me, to keep me safe." Claire cut in. "Margaret, this isn't the time. You lied to me." Daniel's face turned red. "Mom, stop. You told me I was a burden, that I couldn't take care of myself, and the whole time you were planning to take my land and buy yourself a vacation house." Claire's father frowned. "Daniel, is this true?" Daniel stood. "Mom, you're embarrassing yourself." "No," I said. "You're embarrassing yourself." I reached into my purse and pulled out a folder. I placed it on the table. "This is a copy of the power of attorney you had me sign. It gives you medical authority only, nothing else. You have no legal right to sell my property." Claire's face went pale. "I've already filed an injunction. The sale is stopped, and I've filed a complaint for financial exploitation and fraud." Daniel's voice shook. "You can't do this." "I already did." I stood up. I looked at every person at that table. I gave him everything. I sacrificed everything, and he tried to take the one thing I had left. I turned to Daniel. "You're not my son anymore." I walked out. No one followed me. If you've ever had to choose between your peace and your family's approval, you know how hard that moment is. Drop a comment if you understand. The injunction went through. The sale was stopped. The development company pulled out. Daniel lost the deal, but I wasn't done. Sharon advised me to take him to court, to sue for the money I'd given him, to make it public. I agreed. The court date was set for 6 weeks later. In that time, Daniel tried to reach me. He called, he texted, he showed up at my cabin. I didn't answer. Claire tried too. She sent me long messages about how I was tearing the family apart, how Emily missed me, how I was being selfish. I blocked her number. The truth is, I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. The courtroom was small, cold, sterile. Daniel sat on one side with Claire and their lawyer. I sat on the other side with Sharon. The judge was a woman in her 60s. She had kind eyes but a firm voice. Sharon presented the case clearly: the power of attorney fraud, the financial exploitation, the emotional manipulation. She showed the bank records, the text messages, the timeline. Daniel's lawyer tried to argue that I had given the money willingly, that it was a gift. Sharon pulled out a recording. It was from a voicemail Daniel had left me 2 years ago. "Mom, I promise I'll pay you back. I just need time. I love you. You know that, right?" The courtroom went silent. The judge looked at Daniel. "Did you pay her back?" I was planning to. Yes or no?" "No." The judge made a note. Then Sharon stood. "Your Honor, I'd like to call Margaret to the stand." I walked up slowly. My hands were shaking. Sharon asked me to tell my story. I did. I told them about Robert, about raising Daniel alone, about the sacrifices, the money, the broken promises. I told them about the night he tried to sell my home. I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just told the truth. When I finished, the judge looked at Daniel. "Do you have anything to say?" Daniel stood. His voice was quiet. "She's my mother. I thought I was helping. By lying to her? I didn't mean. You forged her authority to sell her home without her consent. You took money you promised to repay. You manipulated her trust. That's not help. That's exploitation." Daniel's lawyer whispered something to him. He sat down. The judge ruled in my favor. Daniel was ordered to repay every dollar I'd given him, with interest, a total of $37,000. He was also barred from claiming any rights to my property, now or in the future. The judge added one final note. "Mr. Daniel, you are fortunate your mother did not press criminal charges. I suggest you reflect on the cost of greed." The gavel came down. I stood up. I looked at my son one last time. He was crying. I felt nothing. Outside the courthouse, Claire was waiting. She grabbed my arm. "Margaret, please, think about Emily. She needs her grandmother." I pulled my arm away. She has a grandmother, but her father made a choice, and choices have consequences. "You're destroying this family." "No," I said. "He did that himself." I walked away. I drove home in silence. The Alaskan sky was wide and gray. The trees were covered in frost. The air smelled like pine and snow. I parked in front of my cabin and sat there for a long time. Then I got out. I walked through the front door and looked around. The kitchen, the living room, the porch where Robert and I used to sit and watch the sunset. It was still mine. I made a cup of tea. I sat by the window. I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. For the first time in years, I felt free. A month later, I got a letter in the mail. It was from Daniel. I almost threw it away, but something made me open it. Inside was a check, the first payment toward what he owed me, and a short note. "Mom, I don't know if you'll ever forgive me, but I'm trying. I'm sorry." I folded the letter and put it in a drawer. I didn't respond. Maybe one day I will, maybe I won't. But I learned something important through all of this. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. You can forgive someone and still choose not to let them back into your life. You can love someone from a distance and still protect your peace. I gave my son everything, and when he tried to take the last thing I had, I chose myself. That doesn't make me cruel. It makes me strong. I still live in my cabin. I wake up every morning to the sound of birds and the smell of coffee. I've started painting again, something I used to do before Robert died. My walls are covered in landscapes now, Alaskan wilderness, frozen rivers, mountains under moonlight. I've made new friends, women my age who understand what it's like to rebuild after betrayal. I see Emily once a month. Daniel drops her off without coming inside. We don't talk, but she's learning that love doesn't mean letting people hurt you. I'm teaching her that. People ask me if I regret what I did. They ask if I miss my son. The truth is, I miss the son I thought I had. The boy who used to hold my hand. The young man who called me every Sunday. But that person doesn't exist anymore. And I can't keep mourning someone who's still alive but chose to walk away. I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret choosing my dignity over his comfort. Because at the end of the day, you teach people how to treat you. And I'm done being a doormat. If you're reading this, if you're listening to this story, and you see yourself in it, please hear me. You are not selfish for protecting yourself. You are not cruel for setting boundaries. You are not wrong for walking away from people who treat you like you're disposable, even if they're family, especially if they're family. Blood does not give anyone the right to drain you dry. I'm 63 years old. I'm standing in the home I built. I'm holding a cup of tea in the kitchen my husband designed. I'm alone, but I'm not lonely, and I'm finally at peace. You can't pour from an empty cup. Fill yourself first. If this story moved you, share it. Someone out there needs to hear it. And if you've ever had to choose yourself over someone you loved, leave a comment. Tell me your story. You're not alone. Thank you for listening.